Hi, I'm Steffi from The Makers. I'm one of the S's at the end of The Makers, and Sophie is the other one. She's behind the camera.
Hello.
Today we are going to talk about very, very basic shaping. So this is how everything starts out. Believe it or not, it starts out as a ball or an oblong shape, so we include that as well. So if you wanted to make something as simple as a pebble, or maybe Christmas pudding, maybe a little owl, just basic ball shapes to put into a garland, pumpkin, bee, birds, they all start out with the same shape. So if you master the basic shape, you can master all of those projects. And so I will show you how to do that. And we'll try and make a little pebble like this. Oh yes, and you can also make geodes, but I will come to that later. We have different core wools. So if anybody talks about core wool, that's generally referred to the wool that's inside. Often less visible unless you're making a geode, but again, we're coming to that in a minute. And the core wool there's no big secret about it. It's basically any wool that's inside. Sometimes core wool is of a lesser quality, so that what's inside it, because it's not visible, as long as it felts well, it doesn't matter so much what it looks like. This happens to be a really nice core wool. It's our Shetland. It's a lovely white, and we often use that to make birds, especially if you have a little bit of white exposed afterwards. Our all-time favorite is the lanolin rich core wool. It's not very pretty in that it's got quite a natural creamy colour. What's lovely about it is that it's very sticky. When I say sticky, don't think you're going to get sticky fingers. You actually get very smooth and soft fingers, because the lanolin, which is the natural sheep fat, has not been washed out. So even though the wool has been washed, it was cold washed, and therefore some of the natural fat is retained. And then we've got our cheap and cheerful basic core wool, which can at times be a bit more separated, so it doesn't come as a big together batch. And it has got bits in it as well, and we often use it on the inside when you definitely don't need to see the inside. All of these are wool bats. Now wool bats they usually look like this. They look already fairly 3D. We buy them in big round rolled up blanket shape wools, and they are opposed to wool tops, which you can probably just see here, long fibers all lined up parallel, and then they are rolled up into like a big knitting ball, or it looks like a knitting ball, but you can't knit with it. Well, you can, but differently. So I'm going to use the lanolin rich wool to make a pebble, and this is what we repeat all the time when we run workshops or when we explain needle felting to people. The basic shape is so important to get right. And when we often say roll the wool up into a ball, and I know there is so much that can be misunderstood. You could think we mean that. We do not mean that. You could also think we mean that. We kind of mean that, but not quite. That's also not the right shape. What we mean is that you fold and roll at the same time. So as you're rolling the wool, you're tucking in some of the wispy ends at the side, and you're making a nice neat roll or ball. And all you end up with are these wispy fibers at the very end, and they're holding the shape together if you pull them nice and tight. And all you've got to do now is you use your needle and you give these wispy ends a little stab, and that has now closed your parcel together. It's not pretty looking, but now you can work from there. And I will show you that also with a Shetland maybe. So again, if you have lumps of wool, so it's not all joined together, so you can have a nice flat piece, there's different, just lay them on top of each other so that they make the largest pieces at the bottom, and it makes a nice flat sheet. And then you roll them in, and the tighter you squeeze this, the smaller your shape will be, the less you have to stab it, because the air gets already squeezed out. And then finish it off by rounding those little wispy fibers all the way around that shape. Stab them a couple of times just to fasten them in, so you go in and out in a straight line with your needle into the wispy fibers and into the shape, and then you can let go of the shape because it will be all nicely folded up and together. So you've got a nice smooth surface, and now you can work on the shaping. So I'm taking my little ball here, And at the moment it's more oblong than round. So if I want to make it round, remember where you stab with the needle, that's where the reduction takes place, just as if you were pointing it with your finger. So you want to get rid of these wispy ends. You just have to stab the needle into exactly that area where you want it to be reduced in size and where the shrinkage is taking place. So just to remind you, the needle felting process is nothing else than what happens to your woolly jumper. If you put it in the hot wash and it comes out several sizes too small and all shrunk, the same thing happens when you stab it with a needle. You're reducing the shape, you're reducing the size, and you're making it firmer, so it becomes a matted felt. In this case, we're doing a 3D shape, but nonetheless, it becomes definitely smaller and firmer. And the more you stab it, the smaller it becomes and the firmer. Now, if you only ever stab the needle, because the working part of the needle goes from about here to there, and there's little notches in it, and these catch the wool. I've actually got a coarser needle here where you might even be able to see it with your eyes. You can see these notches, and if you stab that into the wool, if you look very closely, it pushes the wool inward and it tangles up the fibers inside that shape as you push it in. Now, if you only ever stab the needle halfway in, like that, all you're felting is the surface. A lot of people ask that question, why is my felted item really soft and I can't get it to be firm? That is because you probably don't sink the needle far enough into the center as you're felting it. So if you want a nice firm piece, go right all the way in, make use of that whole length of the needle, even if it goes into the foam mat. That's what the foam mat is for, to catch the needle when it comes out on the other side. As always, be mindful of your fingers. Don't stab yourself, it does hurt. And make sure that you go in and out in a straight line. It doesn't matter if you go sideways, as long as you go in and out in a straight line. So when you've achieved a shape that you're happy with, and remember, if you're making a pebble, this looks pretty much a pebble size. Pebbles are brilliant, by the way, for shaping, because you don't have to worry about any shape. There will be a pebble of that size somewhere in the world, so nobody can challenge you on the shaping of a pebble. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to cover this shape with some pebble colored wool. For this, I've got this lovely, it's actually a South German merino, and I'm going to lay the wool over the top like a dusting. It's always good to work with less and add more rather than putting too much on and then you're just getting your needle to fight with it. So even if you only cover part of it, that's still better than covering the whole lot and then you can't actually felt it down because it's too much for your needle to cope with. So I'm stabbing the wool in all around that shape that I've made. Now you have an opportunity to continue making your pebble firmer by keep stabbing the needle right into the center. If you already have got a very firm shape and you don't want it to be any firmer, then you just go into the surface and fasten the wool in that way. There is no right or wrong. You make your own decision how firm or how soft your shape is going to be. With the pebbles, it's got an added benefit. You can actually just chuck them in the washing machine when they are of a certain shape and size, and the washing machine will continue doing the felting process that you can also do with the needle, but it obviously takes a lot of time away from you to do it. So when you add the color over the top, you will also realize that you probably have to sort of adjust the shape again. That's always how it works with adding anything to an existing shape. You always have to stab the needle around it.